This conference will now be recorded.
Pawan,
Yes, sir.
shall we start the class now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, today we will be discussing about two important questions and for your 4 marks question. One is autoimmune hepatitis and primary biliary cirrhosis. Both are your 4 marks. It can be asked. It's a very important questions and asked in the exams for 4 marks usually. So coming to what is autoimmune hepatitis? It is immune mediated liver disease. That is it's called. It is due to immune mediated and it is characterized by the presence of serum antibodies and peripheral blood lymphocytes react with cell proteins. So there is they found that the studies found that there is strong association with other autoimmune diseases and high levels of serum immunoglobulins in particular. So in particular, there will be elevation of immunoglobulin G. And as compared to other autoimmune diseases, these autoimmune hepatitis is also more common in women, and usually it is more common in second and third decades of life. But when second and third decades are said to be more common, but the disease can occur at any age group. At any age group. So next coming to the what is the pathophysiology. So there are different patterns that can be associated with variation in the disease aspects, such as response to immunosuppressive therapy, histological pattern, uh, in variation, and they are similar in different settings and basic approach to treatment. And the most frequently antibody pattern, that is high titers of antinuclear antibodies and anti-smooth muscle antibodies are usually seen, and anti-mitochondrial antibodies are also seen. And these antibodies are usually associated with IgG hyperglobulinemia, and which is seen in case of young adult females. So it is also characterized by the presence of anti-liver kidney microsomal antibodies, and when these adult onset of anti-LKM, that is liver kidney microsomal antibodies, can be seen in chronic HCV patients. And recent pattern of antibody reactivity with anti-soluble liver antigen has been described, and is typically of adult patients, often with aggressive disease and usually lagging autoantibodies of other specificities. So this is the most recent pattern that is seen is anti-soluble liver antigen. So what are the then coming to the conditions that are associated with autoimmune hepatitis. So many autoimmune disorders that are associated with autoimmune hepatitis. So the list includes migrating polyarthritis, urticarial rash, lymphadenopathy, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, thyrotoxicosis, myxedema, pleurisy, Coombs positive hemolytic anemia, that is hemolytic anemia due to Coombs antigen positive, and transient pulmonary infiltrates, ulcerative colitis, glomerulonephritis, and nephrotic syndromes. These are the conditions that are associated with autoimmune hepatitis. Next, what will be the clinical features? So, most of the patients, the clinical features, they start insidiously and they gradually progress. And in one third of patients, there will be in one fourth of the patients there will be acute symptoms, which these acute symptoms resembles that of the viral hepatitis. Then this acute presentation can lead to extensive liver necrosis and liver cell failure. And there will be other features of apart from the features of liver cell failure, there will be features of such as fever. There will be body pain or bone pain, that is arthralgia. There will be vitiligo and epistaxis. So these are the other features apart from liver cell failure. There will amenorrhea can be there in some patients, and jaundice is seen in of mild to moderate severity, and there are the signs of chronic liver failure. In our previous classes, we have already discussed what are the signs of chronic liver failure. What are the features of chronic liver failure? What are the features of chronic liver failure? Come on.
Fluid, the ascites, sir.
Yes. Ascites next. Only ascites.
Jaundice,
Jaundice will be there. Still what more?
loss of appetite,
Yeah, loss of appetite. Okay. That is indigestion and all those things will be there. Just next. Is anything that is related to
increase in muscle
hypertension?
mass,
Huh? Pardon? Tell me. Could you hear that?
muscle loss, sir.
Yeah, muscle loss, muscle wasting is there. Will be there.
Blood vomitings, hematoma,
Blood vomitings. Blood vomitings due to
uh, deficient, clotting factors deficient.
for deficiency of clotting factor. There won't be. There will be bleeding manifestations. The blood vomiting is right, but what causes? What is the etiology that causes blood vomitings?
Blood vessels in the esophagus, bleeding in the blood vessels of esophagus.
What is that condition is called?
Total hypertension.
No. Have you heard in my previous classes the term esophageal varices? Hello. Hello. Have you heard the term esophageal varices?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is the esophageal varices causes when there is the rupture of this esophageal varices, it causes bloody vomitings, and when there is a deficiency of clotting factors, there will be bleeding manifestations, and there will be these patients of chronic liver disease will also you will also see the features of B12 deficiency. So B12 deficiencies leads to thrombocytopenia, anemia, and leukopenia. All the cell lineages will be diminished. So these are all we see in chronic liver failure, and there will also be the features of portal hypertension. Okay, so all these are seen, and there will be associated autoimmune diseases. Then coming to the main topic. So apart from along with the signs of chronic liver disease, there will be associated autoimmune diseases such as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, and they are usually on examination you will find the patient is having autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis and rheumatoid arthritis. But the per se those their manifesting as clinical presentation is rare. So these are autoimmune, these are associated conditions. Next, coming to the investigations. usually in investigations, a serological test, that is the test for autoantibodies, are usually positive. Antimicrobial antibodies, antimitochondrial. What you have discussed, what are the antibodies that are seen in autoimmune hepatitis?
Antimicrosomal antibody.
Yeah, antimicrosomal antibodies are usually positive in case of autoimmune hepatitis, and there is elevation of serum IgG levels, which are important diagnostic test and also for monitoring the treatment. So, if in case if the diagnosis of autoimmune hepatitis is suspected in those patients, it is better to subject that patient to liver biopsy. So the typical liver biopsy findings will be there will be interface hepatitis without cirrhosis. So what will be the management of this autoimmune hepatitis? Usually the corticosteroids are the mainstay of the treatment of this autoimmune hepatitis. So these corticosteroids, this is the most common used corticosteroid is the prednisolone. We started at a dose of 40 mg per day in a single dose, and it is given it is given at a 40 mg per day, and the dose is usually tapered or dose is reduced when the liver function tests become normal, and when the liver function tests become normal, the prednisolone is gradually tapered, and the maintenance therapy is usually started. And maintenance therapy usually use the immunosuppressant drugs such as azathioprine is usually used, and it is given as at a dose of 1 to 1.5 milligram per kg per day. And some newer immunosuppressant drugs, mycophenolate mofetil, are usually used, and these can be these two are the azathioprine or mycophenolate mofetil are the usually the immunosuppressant drugs that are usually used apart from corticosteroids in maintenance phase. So when the patient is on maintenance phase, the patient should be monitored for acute exacerbations, and in such cases, in this when there is a sudden acute exacerbation, then the dose of corticosteroids should be increased. So the previous dose, that is when you start at 40 milligrams, and if you gradual tapered and at around 20 milligrams per day, you got acute exacerbation. So you have to increase the level of corticosteroids to 25 or 30 milligrams per day. So then it will be gradually tapered. So next coming to the primary biliary cirrhosis. This primary biliary cirrhosis is a chronic progressive cholestatic liver disease. The name itself tells it is a cholestatic disease. So you can say what will be the findings that it will be seen due to cholestasis. What will be the find in that way the presenting complaints and all those things in patients with cholestasis, cholestatic liver disease? What will be the features and what are the symptoms and signs?
Steatorrhea, sir. Clay stool.
Yeah, steatorrhea will be there. That is not steatorrhea. It is a clay color stools. Okay. Steatorrhea is fat in stools. Next, what is the main symptom the patient comes to your OPD?
Abdominal pains.
Prior to abdominal pain will be there. That is only mild abdominal pain.
Anorexia.
Huh? Anorexia will be there. The most worrying symptom is with which the patients comes to the OPD in the case of cholestatic liver disease is pruritus. So there will be more of pruritus in these patients. So they will be vector of this pruritus and itching. So they come to the OPD with a complaint of pruritus, And apart from pruritus, what are the all other features you have said? There is mild abdominal pain, that is right, hypochondriac pain, and there is anorexia, there will be nausea and vomiting, and there will be loss of interest towards food, and also there will be clay colored stools. So it like autoimmune hepatitis, this primary biliary cirrhosis also affects the middle-aged women, and there is a strong association with mitochondrial antibodies that is seen in this primary biliary cirrhosis, and it is characterized by granulomatous inflammation of the portal tracts, which leads to the progressive damage and eventually loss of small and middle-sized bile ducts, which further leads this loss of small and middle-sized bile duct. This further leads to formation of fibrosis and cirrhosis of the liver. So when there is fibrosis, formation of fibrosis, there will loss of function leading to the cirrhosis of the liver. So the condition typically presents with an insidious onset of itching and or tiredness. So there will be some amount of fatigue in these patients. So what is the epidemiology of the patient? There is a strong female to male preponderance, that is 9:1%. That is when you take 100 people, 90 people that are affected with this disease will be females, and only 10% will be males. And it shows a close preponderance in smokers. So it is most common among cigarette smokers. So it shows relation with cigarette smoking. So what is the pathophysiology? It also shows, like autoimmune hepatitis, it is also associated with other autoimmune non-hepatic diseases such as thyroid disease, and there is a genetic association such as HLA-DR8. So what is the genetic association that is related to primary biliary cirrhosis? Is HLA-DR8, and these anti-mitochondrial antibodies, these are directed at pyruvate dehydrogenase complex. So that this pyruvate dehydrogenase complex that plays a role in cellular energy generation. So when these anti-mitochondrial antibodies are directed at pyruvate dehydrogenase, so this complex will be destroyed. So there will be no cellular energy generation. So this leads to fatigue in these patients. So primary biliary cirrhosis specific anti-nuclear antibodies have characteristic staining pattern in immunofluorescence assay. Next coming to this pathologically, this chronic granulomatous inflammation, this destroys the interlobular bile ducts, and there will be progressive lymphocyte mediated inflammatory damage that causing fibrosis, which spreads from portal tracts to liver parenchyma and eventually leads to cirrhosis. So when there is progressive lymphocyte mediated inflammatory damage, it causes this damage to the portal tracts and liver parenchyma and leads to fibrosis and eventually cirrhosis. So this is the flow chart that shows how it occurs. So when there is a genetic susceptibility in the persons, when there is environment trigger factors, there will be latent disease. In latent disease, the liver function test will be normal, but the anti-mitochondrial antibodies will be positive in the latent phase. So when there is a attack, when there is a genetic factors predisposition of the genetic factors, it forms early disease. So in early disease, there will be liver function test will become abnormal, and the anti-mitochondrial antibodies will be positive. So when there is further effect of these genetic factors, further effect, there will be formation of late disease. In the late disease, there will be scarring of the liver leading to cirrhosis. So the liver becomes decompensated. So there will be due to decompensation, the liver will be the person will lead to death. Or in persons when there is a liver who are affordable and goes for liver transplantation, in these patients also 30% of there will be every chances of recurrence of this disease. So this is the normal flow chart how disease occurs in patients of primary biliary cirrhosis. So what will be the clinical features? So when there is a pyruvate dehydrogenase complex is destroyed, it causes fatigue, and we have discussed there will be pruritus. So pruritus and fatigue are the usual; these two are the usual clinical presentations with which the patient comes to the OPD, and these pruritus will be more in the limbs. That is more in the limbs when compared to other central body part. And rarely there will be presentation of jaundice will be the rarely jaundice will be the clinical presentation with which the patient comes to the casualty. And other features are there will be right upper abdominal discomfort, what we have discussed previously, and there will be bone pain or fractures. This bone pain and fractures are due to osteoporosis or osteomalacia, that is that occurs in case of liver disease. So we have previously discussed hepatic osteodystrophy. Have you heard that term, hepatic osteodystrophy? I have told in my previous class while discussing about the complication of cirrhosis. I have told you that there is a bone problem seen in patients of cirrhosis, that is hepatic osteodystrophy. So in these patients there will be decrease in the mineral there will be bone demineralization and osteoclastic activity will be increased, so the bones becomes porous, so there will be bone pain, and there will be every chance there is every chance of the bones become fragile. As bones become fragile, there is every chance of getting fractures. So when there is a disease as disease progresses, there will be weight loss, and there will be xanthomas deposition usually seen around the eyes. So and on examination you will see mild hepatomegaly and splenomegaly. This splenomegaly is due to portal hypertension. So what are the autoimmune diseases that are usually associated with primary biliary cirrhosis? It is Sika syndrome, systemic sclerosis, celiac disease, and thyroid diseases. So if any patient of primary biliary cirrhosis comes with fatigue, it is usually we should rule out hypothyroidism in those patients, and also you should also rule out celiac diseases in those patients. So what will be the diagnosis and investigations? So you all know that the diagnosis is by liver function test, which show the pattern which shows that there is cholestasis. So what will be the liver function test findings in case of cholestasis? What are the liver function test findings seen in cholestasis?
Raised by bile acids.
What bile acids? What bile acids will be raised? Be specific. Don't be broad.
Alkaline phosphatases.
Yeah, there will be alkaline raised alkaline phosphatase will be present. Next, obviously the bilirubin will be elevated, and there will be elevation of gamma glutamyl transaminase. Okay, and there will be presence of hypercholesterolemia will be present, and patients of when subject to serological testing, antimicrobial antibodies are usually present in 95% of the patients, and in patients with antimicrobial antibodies that are negative, MRCP or ERCP is usually done to exclude other biliary diseases. So ultrasound examination usually shows no signs of biliary obstruction, that is any renal any calculi or any cholelithiasis or obstructive stones present usually seen by ultrasonography, but it is only 50%. Only 50% of the stones are usually missed by ultrasonography. So best diagnostic modality is CT abdomen. And when there is a diagnostic, when there is when in conditions of diagnostic uncertainty, in that condition, the liver biopsy helps in the diagnosis of the conditions. And in portal hypertension developed before the histological onset of cirrhosis. So what is the again what will be the management? What will be the management in case of primary biliary cirrhosis? Coming to the management, many immunosuppressants, corticosteroids, azathioprine, penicillin, and cyclosporine have been tried in primary biliary cirrhosis, but these are all of no significant improvement in the disease condition. So the ursodeoxycholic acid is usually given in patients of primary biliary cirrhosis, and it is given at a rate of 13 to 15 milligram per kg per day. This causes this ursodeoxycholic acid improves the biochemical markers of cholestasis and resolution of jaundice. So some studies or some trials show that due to this ursodeoxycholic acid, there will be significantly decrease in the progression of the disease. So for pruritus, for symptomatic pruritus, you should give cholestyramine at a dose of 4 to 16 grams per day. Usually it is given at 8 grams day, 8 grams TID, and it is usually given at the time in which the bile salts will be released from the body. So it is mixed with an orange juice and is given at the time of meals thrice daily and at the time of food. So when the food gives stimulus and the release of bile acid, this cholestyramine also mixes with this bile acid and causes neutralization of these antipruritic agents. The pruritic agents so the alternate treatments include rifampicin, which is given as 150 to 600 milligram per day, and naltrexone, which is an opioid antagonistic. It is initially started with 25 milligrams per day, and it gradually increased up to dose of 300 milligrams per day. And if these two drugs doesn't cause, the plasmapheresis or liver support device are usually reserved for the treatment of pruritus. And for fatigue, there is no specific treatment present. And for malabsorption, you should replace the foods that cause malabsorption. And in case of bone disease, you should supplement the patients with the calcium and vitamin D3. And if you observe any osteoclastic activity in those patients, it is better to start bisphosphonates like olindronic acid, usually given at a dose of 150 milligrams once weekly. And along with this, when there is osteoclastic activity, along with bisphosphonates, the calcium and vitamin D3 are usually given for bone strengthening. So then coming to one more topic is overlap syndrome. It is the same as that of primary biliary cirrhosis. Everything, the findings will all be same as that of primary biliary cirrhosis. But one thing is, anti-mitochondrial antibody will be negative in these patients. So these two topics will be complete. These two topics. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Any doubts? Any doubts?
No, sir.
No, no doubts. Have you understood anything or not?
Yes,
Have you
sir.
understood anything or not? Huh? Yes, sir or no, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now, if you are in your exams, if you ask for a autoimmune hepatitis and all those things, can you answer the questions? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So we will be closing the class now. In the next class, we will be discussing about primary sclerosing cholangitis. In my class, did anyone covered gastric ulcer?
No, sir.
Gastric ulcer was not covered. In surgery, it is covered.
Not yet, sir. Amoebic ulcers are done, sir.
Amoebic ulcers are being dealt. So gastric ulcers should be dealt, and gastric tumors of the GIT. Tumors of the GIT is also not dealt for you, na?
Yes, sir. Not
So
dealt, sir.
GIT, yeah, GIT tumors and the liver tumors and the gastric ulcers should be dealt in the upcoming classes. Okay.
Okay, sir.
We will close the class here.